What's going on, fantasy football people? Hutchinson Brown here. I'm here to bring you week 5 matchups. And basically what this is going to be about, I have a whole list of player/offensive situations, and I want to talk about some players or offenses that are set up for really, really big games this NFL weekend or set up for really, really disastrous games this NFL weekend so you can set your fantasy football lineups accordingly. So we're going to start off with a player who you may not even have heard of just yet. I mean, he's a hot waiver wire pickup this week. So if you haven't really been tuning into the NFL the last few days, you may not have even heard this player. He's an undrafted free agent rookie this season, but he looked pretty good last week. I think he set up for a nice game this week. I'm talking about Jaleel McLaughlin, running back of the Denver Broncos. Javonte Williams looks like he's going to be out for the next handful of weeks with an injury. Should Jaleel McLaughlin set up for a big-time role in this offense? He's an undrafted free agent rookie out of Youngstown State, and he's 5'7", 190 pounds. Last week, with Javonte Williams injured, Jaleel McLaughlin had a solid game. He had 7 rush attempts for 72 yards, 3 catches on 3 targets for 32 yards. And overall, I went back and watched the film, watched every touch he had. He looked extremely explosive with the football in his hands. He's someone that could find open lanes too. There were open lanes in the Broncos offensive line. He's able to cut, get right into it, hit it, attack it hard. He's a very, very quick runner. He can make people miss. He's not, a guy that pushes the pile very much. You saw some one-on-one opportunities that end up not going his way, which for most running backs, that would be like 215, 220. It would go their way. For him, he's just not physical enough to get past those kind of players. Overall, he looked really, really great on his touches, especially just his speed and explosiveness, his quick twitch abilities were really, really nice to see on the football field. This week, he has a matchup with the New York Jets. And the New York Jets, you might think of them as a shutdown defense, but overall in the season, they're much better against the pass than they are against the run. They've allowed the 7th most rushing yards this year. So with Javonte Williams out, Jaleel McLaughlin only has Samaje Perine as competition. He's set up for a significant role in the offense, and the Jets defense is a pretty solid matchup. I think he's a really valuable start this week off the waiver wire right away if you really need a flex or an RB2. Now we're going to talk about another deep play that I think you can go for this week. I'm talking about Zach Wilson, quarterback of the New York Jets. Obviously, this sounds gross. It does, because Zach Wilson over the first couple of years of his career has been pretty mediocre. But last week, he actually balled out. If you kind of missed last week's game against Kansas City Chiefs, which I don't know how you did because Taylor Swift was there. He went 20 of 39 for 245 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have a costly turnover towards the end of the game, but overall, he looked really good. You even saw post-game, Patrick Mahomes went right to Zach Wilson and said, "Hey, man, you balled like effing Aaron Rodgers out there. Keep killing it." Like that's what he said to him. And Robert Saleh even had some compliments for him as well after the game. Zach Wilson's performance was widely recognized, not just by his own teammates, but the other team as well. And this week he gets the Denver Broncos, who have been arguably the worst defense in the entire National Football League this season. They're the team that let Miami score 70 points on them without Jalen Waddle. They've allowed the most rushing yards in the NFL, some of the most fantasy points to wide receivers, to quarterbacks in the NFL. It's been terrible for them. So Zach Wilson, if you really need a QB2 play in a Superflex league, or if you're looking for a DraftKings or a FanDuel or DFS of any kind dart throw, Zach Wilson, somebody you can absolutely go for. So the next one we're going to talk about is a quarterback. Similar situation as Zach Wilson, where he's been struggling so far this year, but bounced back last week. I'm expecting him to continue going forward. I'm talking about Justin Fields. Justin Fields is a player that actually, I think, turned it around last week. Justin Fields threw for an 80% completion percentage, and he made great throws under pressure. I went back, I made sure I watched the film on him, as I did with Zach Wilson. I was very impressed with Justin Fields. And adding on to that, there was specifically one play. What he did, Justin Fields, they were on about like the 3-yard line. Justin Fields takes a snap, and he rolls to his right. He's looking for a throw. It's not there. So he starts to come up towards the line of scrimmage, threatening the run. And he pulls the entire defense. He pulls like 3 defenders right at his face. And all of a sudden, instead of like diving, trying to make a desperate play or running out of bounds, he keeps his eyes downfield and he just, boop, dumps it off, and Cole Kmet is wide open in the end zone. But it was a beautiful, beautiful throw. So make sure Justin Fields is in your lineups this week. He has a matchup with the Commanders. I think he's going to do fantastic. So now let's talk about a couple negatives for this week. I do not want to start any player on the Steelers offense. The Steelers offense is a no for me this week. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are splitting work, and they've both been struggling. The offensive line's been a disaster for the Steelers so far. And the Steelers get a matchup this week with the Baltimore Ravens, who are currently number 7 on the year in passing yards allowed and top 12 on the year in rushing yards allowed. And adding on to that, they don't have Kenny Pickett, their starting quarterback, who hasn't been great. It's Mitch Trubisky is as the starter this week, and we have no clue how he's going to run this offense. Maybe he makes someone fantasy relevant. Maybe he doesn't. I don't want to risk it in my laps. I don't think there's much upside here. I don't think this game will be super high scoring for the Steelers this week. I am just out on the Steelers offense. And then one more negative play for this week, one that I really don't like. I don't love Rhamondre Stevenson or Zeke Elliott this week. Rhamondre Stevenson and Zeke Elliott have a really, really tough matchup in front of them. If the Saints offense is really rolling and the Patriots fall behind, they're not going to be able to run the football a ton. And the Saints defense this year is brutal against the run. They have been over the last few seasons. Rhamondre and Zeke are splitting work. I just don't want anything to do with that backfield this week. This is not a week you want them. So I know Rhamondre was a pretty high pick for you. If you can't bench him, you might be stuck with him, and that's okay. I still value him as an RB2 this week, but I'm quite worried for this backfield. But that's going to be it for this video today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Come back next week. I'll be previewing the matchups for week 6. Good luck in your fantasy football matchups, everybody.